are people still continue to break the rules, even if, of course, the message is out there?
Well, yes. We still have at the ports of entry a number of interception. Yes, I will know you will intercept those that come in through the legal ports, but we have to be mindful. We have a lot of illegal activities happening. What we consider um, ports of non-official ports. I mean, people bringing stuff from all over on our beaches, and that is the dangerous part of the trade. When you do not bring stuff through the official ports, somebody going on a canoe or a fishing vessel, bringing planting material, bringing stuff into the country. There's no quarantine officers at these areas, and so we cannot intercept it. And when you hide things in your luggage and you do not declare it, a simple part of a coconut plant or a coconut plant can cause this pest introduction. And that is why we're saying it's important to declare these things when you are coming in. It's important to apply for an import permit. When you apply for an import permit, we do the necessary risk assessment and give you the measures how you can bring these commodities. And that is why we want the general public to understand. We are not saying that you cannot bring there things that are prohibited, but when you apply for an import permit, the plant quarantine unit will do a risk assessment and give you the requirements how you can bring it in. And when you do that, you save, not only we're talking about coconut now, but you can safeguard the entire agriculture sector by not introducing a pest and a disease in your country, both for plant and animal.
Where did this disease come from in terms of where it originated? What has your study shown?
So, as was mentioned by the Permanent Secretary, the disease is already throughout the Caribbean, various countries throughout the Caribbean and the French islands. So, we have detected the disease in Woodford Hill.
No, I was I'm glad you're saying that, but I was asking in terms of is it something that came from the Caribbean or further afield on the international scene? Where did it really come from? Where was that born? If I could ask that.
It having been detected in Woodford Hill indicates to us that it may have come from a neighboring island. That's what we believe may have happened because the concentration of the disease is towards the bay side of Woodford Hill. So that's why I mentioned Woodford Hill. That's where it is. So it may have come in through an infected palm, or it may have been coming through an infected vector. So I can go on to tell you more about the disease if you'd like.
Yes.
Okay. So as was mentioned, the disease name is lethal yellowing disease. What it is a phytoplasma. So it's something like a bacteria you would have as a human. It's a parasite. It needs a living host to survive. So within the living coconut tree, it enters the tree and it devastates it. That disease can be in a coconut palm or in another host because it affects coconut and various palm species. It can be in that palm for up to like 7 months and you do not see any symptoms of the disease. You call that a latent period. And then it starts to express itself. What it does is first it causes the immature nuts, all nuts on the tree, to just drop. All nuts drop, and what you would see is a blackening of the calyx area. That's like the where it attaches to the stem, it gets black. Next, you would see the blackening of all the flowers. Youngest, oldest, the blackening of the flowers, the inflorescence. Next, you would start to see yellowing of the leaves. And it's a gradual yellowing from oldest to youngest, eventually with the death of the youngest spear leaf. From that time on, within 3 to 5 months, it takes from nut drop to the entire crown of the coconut falling. And the tree becomes a telephone post, a dead tree. So we're dealing with a very serious situation right now in Woodford Hill. And as a ministry, we have recognized it as such, and we are facing it head on to destroy it. Our objective is to eradicate it from Woodford Hill, and we do not want it to spread further throughout the island.
And it spreads rapidly, right?
Yes. So there are two means by which the disease can be spread. It can be spread through infected planting material. So if somebody takes, let's say, a small plant from under a tree that was infected, and that plant is infected and brings it to another location, it can be spread that way. It also needs a vector. So it's a two-prong thing. If you bring an infected tree to a new location and the vector is there, or the vector accompanies it, which is a small leaf hopper, it will take that disease from the palm, and then it can now transmit it to palms that have not yet been affected. So there comes management.
Well, before we go into management, I just want to emphasize the point of the spread, the transmission of the disease. Let us put that into context. The disease requires a host. Similarly, like malaria, dengue, they require a host. And for years, we have detected the hopper since 2014, I believe.
Yes.
And the disease was not in Dominica. So our risk assessment, when we do our pathway analysis, it indicates that a disease plant or even a disease vector was introduced. And so now we have the disease, and so what the vector is doing, it is going to one plant to another, transmitting the disease. So in layman's term, you have coconut plants with the disease, but without the vector, the disease cannot spread. So if for example, we take up a disease plant into a location where the vector is not present, the disease will not spread. So the plant, the disease requires the vector to basically feed on a disease plant. And I'm trying to explain that so the farmers, the local
Yes, explain it, yes.
understand.
Because I wanted to ask you before you mention this, I wanted to ask you, what do you look out for as it relates to field diagnosis and how the disease is identified, of course, if blackening has not started. But what you're saying there is very interesting.
Right. So the late and the classical symptom is that you will see a coconut plant looks like a telephone pole with no leaves, nothing. It's just bare. So that's the basically classical symptoms of it. And as Ms. Gordon said, well, I should say Mrs. Farrer, no. Because she said
it was very recent?
Yeah, she said she was taken.
Okay. Very recent.
So we are saying some of the symptoms that you're saying. Some may say, but Mr. Ansem, what are you talking about? We've seen leaves, the coconut tree yellowing all about the country. But there are other diseases that can cause yellowing.
Okay.
So that's important to note. You have bud rot disease that can cause yellowing, that can cause the nuts to drop as well. You have what we call a pest complex. You have white flies, you have scales, and you have red palm mite that can cause that yellowing. And sometimes lack of nitrogen can cause this yellowing. But the classical symptoms, as Mrs. Ferrer said, you will see the dropping of the young nuts with a kind of necrotic ring over the callus area. And
break that down for us, because of course, so some farmers may be listening. When you say necrotic ring around the callus area, what does that mean in layman's terms?
So the fallen nut, where the nut attaches to the tree, it usually attaches what is called a calyx. What you would find is that calyx will not be there. The attachment would not be there. It look like a suction cup. But what you see when the nut falls is the entire area where it was attached is black. I hope that is clear enough. So yes.
We'll go over this again, of course.
And then, as we mentioned, then you see the next symptom of all the flowers turning black. So a normal healthy tree, you would have constant emergence of young nuts. The tree, you do not see black. You would see maybe a yellowish color of the flowers, yellowish, whitish, creamish color of the flowers. You would see the new nuts emerging and the mature nuts on the tree, etc. But with that disease, what you find, as if you are human that have a bacterial infection, you will see symptoms of the disease. You will see you start having film, you'll feel your body aches, etc. It's a similar thing with the plant. It's a living organism. So when it becomes infected with that bacteria, it shows the symptoms in that way. It shows death, basically, of the plant.
So it will not show black at once.
No.
There's a process.
A
before
process.
it reaches that
Right.
stage.
Right. So if we go to the real botany and the biological functions of the thing, what the disease is a bacteria. The first function it basically do, because it the living host, it will basically block the xylem and phloem vessels, and so nothing can go up. Water nutrient can go up, and photosynthesis can go down. So that is why basically you have death of the trees, because it cannot, no nutrient can go up from the soil, and no photosynthesis can think. So that disease basically just block the phloem and xylem vessels, and that's why you have rapid death. Importantly to note, we have not been seeing the symptoms on palms and some varieties of coconuts, which means there are some resistance in some varieties, and we are doing some research on that. Part of it is last night we had a very good meeting with the farmers. When we first intercepted the diseases, we took rapid action. We put an emergency action plan in place, and we increased our surveillance activities, and we will discuss what plans we have later in the program, eradication. And I know we just want to emphasize the program itself is to eradicate the disease in Woodford, and that will mean that we have to cut down the trees and burn, and that is a painful exercise.
You're telling me essentially that one of the key management for this is cutting down of the trees.
Right. Because there's no management, and Ms. Ferrer will explain the treatment
Options that are available.
measures. But that disease, similarly as Wang Long Bing, we call it the citrus disease, there's no management per se. It will kill, as I explained, really xylem and phloem vessels, basically to just kill the tree. Because when the tree cannot get nutrients from the soil, and the photosynthesis, basically a tree will die. That's what most virus and bacteria does. And so the only treatment, immediate treatment, is to cut down all infested trees and to burn them. Now remember we said the tree, or the disease, the disease requires a living cell, living plant. And so once we cut the tree, we basically eliminating the disease. And so that is the management. There are jurisdictions that are treating it with antibiotics, and that itself is a dangerous method. When you treat with antibiotics, there's no way you can basically drink the nut. We are not recommending that. Or the jurisdiction injecting antibiotics to the palms, because palms, people don't eat parts of the palm. It's for beautification, ornamental palms and these things. So there are different measures, treatment, but in our case, it is contained in Woodford Hill area, and once we can do a containment, very good containment job in cutting all the infested trees, and importantly, we have to prevent the movement of infested materials to other areas.
This is a very sensitive exercise. You have to be very careful as how you go about doing this.
And we are concerned with the jelly nut industry. We are concerned that people are doing agro-processing. We are mindful of that. We will put a plan in place. We will meet with them because we recognize there are people that have livelihoods coming from the coconut industry, and we have to be mindful of this. But at the same time, we are discouraging the movement of planting material from one area, particularly the Woodford area.
Wow. If you're just listening, welcome. It's 9:30 in our studios. We're discussing the lethal yellowing disease. It's a disease which is spread by an insect. What is it on the insect? Is there a name?
Yes.
I saw plant hopper, but I'm not sure what plant hopper means
Yes.
in your terms as an agricultural person who's very much involved in this field. Plant hopper insect. What does that mean? It hops
Yes.
from one plant to the other, or what?
Exactly that. It's not an insect that flies long distances.
Oh.
You've ever seen a big grasshopper? The big oblong grasshoppers that you might find around
Yes,
your
yes.
home. It's basically a miniature version of that. It's very small, about 3 to 5 millimeters. Very, very small. And it can be found on the underside of the leaves of the infected trees, or it hosts plants. Its scientific name, for those out there who may be interested, is called Haplaxius crudus.
Haplaxius
Crudus. Yes. And the scientific name of the disease is Candidatus phytoplasma palmi.
All right. Well, I'll not repeat this one. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you for this. But yes, this poses a serious threat to our coconut industry and the livelihoods that it supports. But what have you noticed, though, when the darkening occurs? Is there still water in the coconut? Or if there is does the color change? What have you noticed?
So the fallen nuts, there will still be water in it, but these nuts cannot germinate, and these nuts would not be suitable for consumption.
But I was referring to the color. Is it the same color? Like when you open a coconut and you see the water inside of it, is it the same?
It would be. I have not opened one.
So I'm asking that because you have to be very, very careful.
Yeah, but just to say that if a coconut plant is infested, the question is, can you drink the coconut water? And the answer is yes. Because the disease will not transmit to
Okay,
human.
fine. But I was asking as well.
Yeah.
So-
There's no discoloration of the
Of
water.
the water, okay.
Okay, but the classical symptoms of it, the nuts will not even reach this stage of maturity for you to even have a jelly nut to drink, because it will basically, as Miss Farah said, one of the first symptoms, the inflorescent, the green part, the yellowing part, before you even speak of formation of nuts, the disease will prevent that from even giving you a nut in its severe stage. And what you will find, the young nuts will drop. They wouldn't reach the stage of maturity. So to answer your question, yes, it is safe to drink if you have a mature nut, it is safe to drink a jelly, the water. But the disease is so destructive that in its stage where it's being severe, you would even get to the stage of giving you a mature nut. And that is what we are seeing, classical symptoms in Woodford. We are seeing a rapid drop of the young nuts. When we did our survey, we are actually working on them. And it's important that people have to understand the planting material from this nut or from this tree should not be transported or given to farmers as a source of planting material. We want to contain all plants, plant parts, plant products to the Woodford Hill area.
I have with me a copy of a public awareness material that was developed. On it has some pictures. Maybe I could show.
Sure.
If I could
Yes,
come
yes.
closer to the camera,
In fact, I could also put
You-
it on the...
you could appreciate what the nuts actually look like.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good.
yes.
So if the public can see that.
Perfect. That's a good job,
Good.
Ivona.
So, I mean, you would not go on the market and buy that jelly nut. And I do not think that a vendor would have the, the conscience to come and sell you something like that. So these nuts would not reach the market. If nuts reach the market, it would be healthy, from healthy trees. and then you can see what happens with the blackening of the flowers, the yellowing of the leaves, and eventually the telephone post. So when when I describe the symptoms, this is it visually.
Wow. Premature coconut drop. There's a photo there, blackened flowers, yellowing fronds, crown collapse. This is serious.
Yes.
This is serious.
Yes, this is an issue that, if left unchecked,
Unchecked, yes.
will result in total destruction of our coconut industry.
Let's go to the telephone. Someone may be calling to ask a question. Good morning. Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Hi.
And good morning to you.
Yes.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
I use quite a bit of coconut
Uh-huh.
in what I do. Now, what I notice is that when you break the dry coconut and you peel off that brown skin, there is yellowing of that coconut. And I want to know if that is related to the same disease.
Okay, that's the question?
Yes.
Okay, they're going to answer, and if you have to call again, you could call again.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Ryan Anselm.
The answer is no. This is not associated with the disease, because with a diseased tree, the coconuts do not even reach maturity. As we said previously, the nuts fall prematurely, so they do not even get to mature. So this would be maybe another issue. The quality of the coconut, if it stayed too long after being harvested before she broke it open, there might be something else causing that discoloration.
Okay, all right. So if you have another question, you could call us 1-800-327-4483-279, 4483-281. If you're calling from overseas, the number is 305-432-9744. We're talking about the lethal yellowing disease. It's a disease of palms caused by a phytoplasma pathogen. And there's a long word attached to it. You may want to just tell us again what the name is.
So
As
it's,
I said,
yeah, Candidatus phytoplasma palmae, and it's vectored by a leafhopper, a small leafhopper called Haplaxia scrotus.
let us look at disease management and the management strategies for the lethal yellowing disease. I know we went through this a little, but it's always good to bring it back up. What exactly now? Where are we now in as it relates to this? Of course, you have gone to Woodford Hill, you have done your research and all of that, but as far as the management is concerned, tell us again what we are doing.
The ministry has identified the location where the disease is. We've done a map, and what we have done is we have created zones. So we now have a red zone where the disease is found, a yellow zone around that. Within the red zone, the Ministry of Agriculture has made a determination to destroy all trees. The aim of that is to prevent spread. Destroy and burn all trees is to prevent spread. Then we'll continue with our surveillance activities throughout the area and all in that yellow zone, in the neighboring areas, to ensure that the disease is not spreading, or to ensure that if any infected tree pops up, it is managed immediately. So there'll be continued surveillance, there'll be continued informing of the public awareness, as we are doing now. And there'll be the destruction of all infected trees in the immediate vicinity, in the red zone, where we now have found the infection to occur. And there are other activities that will continue, but these are three of the main ones. But how the community, how everyone can come on board is what we've mentioned before. Please do not move any planting material from the infected zone of Woodford Hill, because that is how the disease will spread. We also have to be vigilant, even with the movement of the nuts that we consume, though the disease may not be in the actual nut, but the vector could hitchhike on that nut. And an infected vector going to another area will bring the disease. So we have to be careful.
As you mentioned in nuts, when I was doing the research ahead of the program for this morning, so when I was reading up last night, I noticed that Brazil in particular, some of the disease come from there. And as you mentioned, the nuts, the Brazilian Dway nuts, maybe you want to talk more about this, Ryan Anselm, as it relates to the Brazilian nuts? Well, any relation there? Any?
Well, we Well, I'm happy that you asked this question. Um, we recently, in the whole development program, expansion of the coconut industry, we brought in dwarf Brazilian nuts. One may ask the question.
Or is it dwarf nut? Not
Yes.
way. Okay, dwarf.
Yes.
Yes.
So one may say, okay, you brought that in. Is it the Brazilian nut that brought in the disease? And we want to dispel that. And I will just give an explanation of that. When we brought in the nuts, as a responsible ministry, we did a risk assessment, and we contacted all the experts in the Caribbean. And one of them is one of the leading disease of coconut, Dr. Myrie in Jamaica, renowned pathologist, expert on coconut disease and coconut management on a whole. And the recommendation, and we worked with CADI. CADI is one of the leading research institutions in the Caribbean. We did that risk assessment, and Brazil was the safest place to bring in nuts. And when we brought the nuts, we had some little issues. We've observed a disease on the nut. As a prudent and responsible ministry, what we did, we held the nut back. We did not distribute the nut until a year. And so what we effectively did, we quarantined the nuts and we observed the nut. We sent samples to the lab in the University of Florida and other labs to ensure that there was no disease of quarantine importance. And what that means, disease that will kill the plants when we get it to the farmers. And if you recall...
And it would have to take a year? That is the period?
Well, but the period would be 3 months.
Okay.
In the nursery. But as I mentioned, as a prudent government and ministry, what we did, we quarantined the nuts.
Extra
We
caution.
wanted to be sure and guarantee the farmers when we give you the nut, it is free of disease. And the samples that we sent to the University of Florida of this Brazilian nut, it came free. The result said there was no lethal yellowing and there no pest of and disease of quarantine importance. And Miss Gordon can tell, Mrs. Ferrer, sorry.
You have to get used to it.
Yes, we have to get used to that. Because I know as Miss Gordon, in my planned quarantine life, she was one of my staff there. But part of it is that when we send the samples of the infested coconuts, we ensure, and even the Honorable Minister remind us that we need to test the Brazilian coconut, the dwarf nut that we introduced. And it came back negative.
Okay.
And so we want to dispel that notion that it was the Brazilian nut. We know some farmers are saying that. Even in our meeting last night, some farmers asked this question. And the results from the University of Florida declare that the Brazilian nuts are currently free from lethal yellowing. But one point I want to make, Ivan, and that is critical. It doesn't mean that if the Brazilian nut is in the red zone, as Linessa indicated, that it will not be infested with the lethal yellowing. And that has to be clear. When it came in, we are sure that it came free, negative of lethal yellowing. But the point I want to make, if a farmer from Woodford Hill planted that Brazilian nut in the red zone that we are saying, and remember we said it's a hopper, and if the disease is there, it will basically infest that Brazilian nut. I hope that is clear, and we understand that. But what we are anticipating and hoping that the Brazilian nut, and I've told my staff to do some research on that, we are hoping that the Brazilian dwarf nut may have some form of resistance of that disease. And so I hope that is clear to everybody, but I'll just repeat
Yes, I was just about
that
to
the
tell you.
Brazilian dwarf that we imported from Brazil, we tested it before we gave it to the farmers. It was negative, came back negative for lethal yellowing and other pest of corn importance. And in the current situation where we are, the interception of lethal yellowing, when we tested the Brazilian nut in Woodford Hill, it came back negative as well. But what I want to emphasize on, it doesn't mean that if the Brazilian nut is in Woodford or in a farmer field in the red zone where the disease is, eventually it will be infested. It may not show the classical symptoms, but it will basically be infested 1 day or 2 months, 3 months from now. I hope that is clear to the listening public and the farmers.
Lethal yellowing disease is what we're discussing this morning on Talking Point. Now, from what I observe, the plant hoppers are quick, from what you were saying earlier. So, because they are so quick, what are the challenges in controlling the disease due to the presence of these plant hoppers? Because you have the plant hoppers to combat, sort of.
Yes. Also, there was something to be mentioned about these leaf hoppers. There is a life cycle of the leaf hopper. So, for the first part of its life cycle, which is about 1.5 months, its life is within the grass, within grasses, within the root zone of grasses. So it's at its nymphal stage is what we call it, where it does not really look like a leafhopper yet. It looks like some other deformed insect. He's at the nymphal stage. From it, the adult lays its egg within the root zone of grasses, like our St. Augustine grass, like our Guinea grass. There are different grasses that it lays its egg within the root zone. The nymphal stage develops within the root zone of the grass, and the adult emerges somewhere around at about after a month and a half, flies to the leaves of the palms or its host, and then there it feeds on the palm. It can infect the palm, or it can then take the disease that already exists in the palm and bring it elsewhere. The adult life cycle is about a week to 2 weeks where it does that.
Right. So I want to the management strategy really is twofold. We have to eliminate the source of the disease. That is one. By cutting the trees, burning the trees, so you eliminate the disease itself. So there will be no disease to be transmitted. That is one strategy. The other one is to manage the vector, we call it the vector, that transmit the disease, to bring the population very low. And by doing that, we must do what we call a chemical treatment, an insecticide, and manage, sanitize. Sanitation is going to be key. So we're asking the farmers, not only the farmers, there are people with coconuts and palms in the yard and backyard. So we're asking them to keep the grass low, very low. By that you can destroy the life cycle of the vector. And I'm always tempted to say psyllid. I don't know. Psyllid is just in my head. Psyllid is a vector that transmit the citrus greening. Similarly, that is basically what we do. I've told the staff as well to explore the possibility of natural enemies that can combat and manage the hopper. But basically, it is going to pose a challenge for us in Woodfordale. I visited there twice already. If you know our landscape, coconuts are planted everywhere. They are growing everywhere in the valleys. So we must make access. We must cut down the vegetation to get to the coconut. But our ministry is up to the task. We've also engaged the Division of Forestry, because it will involve chainsaw men to cut down the trees. And if you know where coconuts are planted, by the beach side in the valleys, so it's going to be a very costly exercise, but we that is our responsibility, and we believe if we do not contain it in Woodfordale and allow it to spread, it will be very, very destructive to the coconut industry. And I can say that coconut is one of the priority crops. When you look at the value chain of coconut, the ministry in its program, in its policy strategy, has identified coconut as important, and that is why we put a deliberate effort to say we're going to expand the coconut industry, 70% jelly nut and 30% dry nut. That means we have a thriving jelly nut industry, and you can see it all over Roseau, all over the place. What we want to do is to expand that industry. Just 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, you would hear that we passed the food safety bill. And that in whole aspect is to have people drinking safe coconut water. And that self is threatened by this disease. Can you imagine, Ivona, that I don't know where you buy your coconut water, but going across the bridge that you cannot buy your coconut water. Just imagine that, because of that deadly disease. And that is why we are called. We are first calling of the residents of the Woodford Hill area. We had a meeting last night, as I indicated, and they have to take that seriously. And as I said in the meeting, we rely on them to save Dominica. That's straight how I told them in the meeting.
Wow, it's that serious.
We rely on the Woodford Hill residents, the farmers, to save the industry, because that is the first place we intercepted. The report from the expert said that is the first place. And we're asking people if they see any pole-like coconut tree, like there's nothing, you see, like a telephone pole, to quickly call the quarantine officers, the extension officers. Or
Give us a number as you're saying this.
266-3828, 266-3803, 266-3807, 266-3871. So these are various numbers they can call. Just ask to speak to a quarantine, plant protection and quarantine officer, and we shall take your
Or
information.
your extension officers in the different regions.
Yes.
Just to say, we want to acknowledge the efforts of the plant quarantine unit, all the technical officers, even the minister. The minister is out of state, but every minute he's tuning in recommending and asking updates. So we are on board, and we have dedicated staff, and we're going to form teams. As I indicated before, we are basically reviewing our emergency action plan. An emergency action plan basically describes all the actions you have to take to eradicate a disease. So we are currently reviewing it and putting a rapid emergency action plan together to really manage that disease. And I say manage in the sense of eradicating the disease.
Wow. I really have to recognize the contribution of plant quarantine officers, extension officers, and every one of you involved in this exercise. Sometimes, these jobs, they go overlooked. People don't really look at it much. But what you're doing is very, very important. I just have to stop and say this and recognize, your role in the ministry, because this is a huge undertaking. And I'm saying this because I'm on radio for so long now, right? And I've had quite a lot of interviews where it relates to pests, insecticides, and whatever affecting, our crops. And then look what we are faced with. And you said last night you met with Woodford Hill farmers, Ryan and Sam.
Yes.
And of course we are on Talking Point this morning. So the sensitization drive, in terms of going forward, what do you have planned? How much do you have in store for that public awareness campaign that should be on?
Well, we have to meet it started with the resident of Woodford Hill, but as we indicated, there are vendors of the jelly. I've told the plant quarantine staff as early as Monday. It was not possible today because we have to mobilize, invite them. But as early as Monday, we need to meet them. We need to present the case to them and how they can help in preventing the spread. The modality of the trade, the vendors, is that they go all over Dominica collecting the nuts. And we are saying for a couple of months to avoid going to Woodford Hill. That is sacrifice we are asking, avoid going to Woodford Hill, and that's what we tell the resident. Obviously, Ivona, there's a livelihood component because on 5 coconuts, just 5 healthy coconuts, you can make a serious living, of 5 coconuts. If they are bearing heavily, that's money. So we acknowledge that the livelihoods of the people in Woodford is going to be impacted, and so we have to come up with programs. One of the programs is engage them to grow short-term crops, and work with Dexia. Dexia have priority crops. We're talking about pumpkin, cucumbers, and others in the short term, that to guarantee them a livelihood. At the same time, in Jamaica, they have a replanting program. In the same infested areas, Jamaica have a program, cut and plant.
In the same infested areas?
In the same infested areas. Is a management program that they have. So once we eradicate the disease, and the
because the disease will not affect other plants, so you can plant, you can
right.
Okay.
It is specific
Right.
to palms. And thank you, Ivona, for that. We should have said that it is specific to palms. And if you plant cucumber and things, so we are looking at one of the short-term measures to ensure the livelihood of things, because there's a particular farmer that he say he depends on jelly nut. Some of the infested trees are on state land. That will be easy for us. We're talking about huge acreages.
And you may have to look at resistance from some farmers as well.
Well, we are in that area, so we anticipate that. But last night we did not get that. We were asking the people, and I think the people understand. I think the people understood the reason why we have to do that, because and the tree is dead. So there's no production in the tree. So it's resistant, yes, but what you're going to resist? You have a dead tree, and we will come in, we'll work with them. We have serious staff on board. We have Dr. Almario Kazimi, Tarifa Luda. Even your daughter, Dr. Luge.
Dr. Luge,
is with us. I was impressed with the map that she gave us last night, showing the epidemiology spread. So everybody is on board. Your daughter is a veterinarian, and she's involved in crops. So that is how serious we are taking. Everybody is on board. We want to thank Franklin Joseph as well, the quarantine staff, the plant protection, Diane Stott. There's a whole team on it, and as I said, the minister is calling in and texting, giving his own recommendations. So the whole ministry is on board. What we want now is for the farmers, the backyard farmers, to come on board and take ownership and take responsibility in terms of not spreading the disease. When we go home from the zone, the intercepted zone, or the red zone as we call it, we don't know what will happen 8 p.m., 9 p.m.
Yeah.
And it has to take a conscious effort by the farmers and the residents in Woodford to say no to giving your neighbor or someone from a neighboring community coming that will want a plant, to say no. We are strictly, and the area is going to be quarantined. And so we want to work with the police, we want to work with everyone.
This is a costly exercise.
Yes, it is. But we have best practices, we have experience. We dealt with citrus greening, we dealt with Tristeza. We are currently dealing with giant African snail. So we are not basically what we call rookies. But yet still we have to ask for some assistance. The minister has indicated to FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization, that definitely we need assistance. As I said, we want to thank CADI. CADI has been a very good support on that end. We have to activate some groups. We have a coconut stakeholder platform. We're going to activate this platform. We're going to continue the surveillance and thing. As a matter of fact, we have declared that the Woodford area is a quarantine zone. The Plant Protection Act of 1986 give us that legal authority if a pest is deemed notifiable, if a pest is of quarantine importance. More so, I just want to speak to the farmers. If it will affect your pocket and the country as a whole, it can be deemed a notifiable pest, and that is what we have done. We will have the SNRO for that and to manage the thing. But importantly, the message I want to send, we can put all the measures in place. We can put all the legislative framework in place. We can do all the measures and treatment. If the resident do not comply, if the resident smuggle, if the resident do not help in the containment of that disease, we'll have a serious problem. And I indicated to the resident before they have a serious role to protect the industry, because that is where we find it first. And we have an opportunity, early detection. And as I said, I want to thank the quarantine department. Early detection was key. We detected, we send the samples out rapidly to test, and we've declared the area quarantine area. It's up to the resident now to assist us to contain that disease, and we'll go full force in eradicating the disease, because if we don't, it's going to spread island-wide, and we're going to have a serious problem. And if people just Google lethal yellowing, the first few words they're going to get: drastic, destructive, everything negative.
Rapid spread.
The most destructive. These are the words you will get when you Google lethal yellowing disease. And so, with black sigatoka, with giant Africans, with all the disease, you can manage it. You can treat it with chemicals. You can do it. But with this one, the only management is to cut and burn.
We have an outside broadcast in a short while. Let me just see if they're ready. If not, let me just ask you quickly though, any collaboration with other countries that have gone through this?
Yes, we have been getting guidance from other countries. We've gotten assistance, for example, from Jamaica, as he mentioned to Dr. Wayne Myrie, from Antigua, from Trinidad. So we have been in collaboration with other countries who have experience to assist us going forward. So, as the name of the disease itself implies, lethal yellowing disease, something lethal kills. It's a serious issue we have on our hands. But if everyone comes on board and does their part, we look to eradicate that disease from Woodford Hill and not have it spread island-wide and cause, our coconut economy to fail. So we urge the public, please do not move infected planting material. Do not move soil or grasses from the area, because it can transport the nymphs. Help us contain the disease within Woodford Hill and eradicate it there.
Okay. Very interesting discussion.
Yes, and I just want to emphasize, Ivona, and that's a very good point, and I need to emphasize it. It's not only planting material of coconut or palms from one village to another, grasses, soil can spread the vector itself. Even I've told the quarantine people we have to engage the people in giving them disinfectant tools. When you go on your farm and you want to go to another community, we want you to take heed that you have to basically wash your shoes. Don't go. It's going to be a sacrifice, but it's a sacrifice that we're asking to do. So I just want to emphasize not only spreading it with the plant, but if you cut your grass and you want to, for example, you want to bring it to Marigot or in Concord from that area, it can spread the vector and soil.
Yes.
And these things it's important. These are pathways. It's not only the plants, the coconut plants or palms itself, but grasses, clothing, your vehicle as well. If you park your vehicle in the yard, and the vector can hitchhike a ride on your vehicle. So it's a serious issue that we're talking about. We don't want to downplay the severity of the disease.
Yep.
Yeah, very serious. I would like to invite you all again, though, some other time when you feel it's fit, Ryan and Selm, of course, as you continue this exercise. Let us find out where you are in reference to what we are doing, to eradicate this lethal yellowing disease from Dominica. So we'll keep in touch, maybe in a month's time or 2 weeks' time if it's necessary, or even a week's time if it's necessary, because we have to continue to drive the message home. This is very serious. There's a lot that we can do together, and we have to take control of these things. We have to take control of this. We have to take ownership of this in an effort to eradicate the disease from Dominica. Closing remarks from you, Mrs. Ferrara?
Thank you. Thank you for having us. And I hope the message was clear, and persons will assist with us containing and eradicating that disease in Woodford Hill, and that we can see our coconut industry continue to strive. So thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure to have you, Permanent Secretary Ryan Anselm. You have seen a lot, eh? You have
Yes,
seen a lot
yes.
from since you entered this field.
Yes. You think I deserve an award, eh?
Yes,
Yeah.
you have seen a lot. You have fought a lot. I know, I tell you, because I've been in radio for a long while.
Yeah.
And since I started, you're very, very young, and you were always involved in this, always on radio talking about things that's happening.
Right, and we want to emphasize the importance of quarantine. As I indicated, the disease or the pest can come in. It can come in on a airplane, but on its own, it has to take a human to bring it in. So we are appealing again. We have never said no, bringing things. There are things that are prohibited, we'll tell you no. But apply for an import permit. We'll do the necessary risk assessment. We'll give you the requirements it can come in. Smuggling things into any country poses a risk, and we have to understand that once you have the agricultural sector is plagued with pests and diseases, and they did not come on their own, and that is basic to understand. If you are in Holland, if you are in St. Lucia, and you want to bring an orchid, something, don't put it in your suitcase. Permit it and have to pass away, because that single pan-pat can cause serious problem for agriculture industry. So again, we want to thank DBS. DBS has been a partner for not only pest and disease issue, but when we speak agriculture, we want to tell the farmers there are programs. We are talking about a disease, but you have to understand that there are other development programs in agriculture that we want to talk. A brand new abattoir. Today we are getting bad news, but there are good news in the sector. We're going to commission a brand new abattoir, $5.8 million abattoir. We are also going to commission a citrus certification, a $7.8 facility. And the same, why we are doing this citrus certification is to combat citrus greening disease. And so we want to say there is hope in agriculture. Agriculture is one of the important sectors. Notwithstanding this bad news this morning, but there is hope in agriculture, and there is serious investment that we are doing in agriculture, working with the young people to develop agro parks, that we can expand our vegetable subsector.
There's a lot of good things happening.
Yes.
Exciting things happening in agriculture.
Yeah. So we will come back and give the people good news. Today is relatively bad news, but there are very good things happening in agriculture, in the fishery subsector, agro-processing. So there's things to be cheerful about and hopeful. So thank you again, Ivona, and we will knock on your doors very soon to speak about our success of our plan. Thanks again.
Thank you to both of you.
Flow makes your next phone upgrade easy. Add postpaid to your internet plan and score a Samsung Galaxy for as low as $33 a